What's it really going to take to save and strengthen democracy in America? Welcome to Future Hindsight, where we take big ideas in civic life and democracy and turn them into action items for you and me. Because democracy is not a spectator sport, and tomorrow starts right now. I'm Mila Atmos. The vast majority of this show's guests lean left, mostly by virtue of our pro-democracy leaning conversations, whether we're talking to academics, policy wonks, or political operatives. To be clear, it's not true that conservatives aren't pro-democracy, but it's also not a secret that many Republicans today have supported gerrymandering and voter suppression legislation, just to name a few anti-democracy examples. One thing that has become abundantly clear, though, is that to make democracy really deliver for all of us, we need to build a big tent pro-democracy coalition across the political spectrum. And to explore how we can do that, we're joined by Rick Wilson. He's a 30-year veteran of national Republican politics, starting with the 1988 presidential campaign of George Herbert Walker Bush. He's now a registered independent, a never-Trumper, co-founder of the Lincoln Project, host of the Lincoln Project podcast and the Enemies List podcast. He is a man with a finger on the pulse of American politics. And before we start, thanks to Shopify for supporting Future Hindsight. Shopify is a platform designed for anyone to sell anywhere, giving entrepreneurs like myself the resources once reserved for big business. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/hopeful. And if you want to support Future Hindsight, subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's easy and free and a great way to build your civic action toolkit every week. Head to youtube.com/Future Hindsight to subscribe after this episode. Welcome, Rick. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Mila. I appreciate it.
So I'm really excited to have you here on the show. You and I were recently part of a conversation with Sharon McMahon, who said something that has really stuck with me lately. And she said that the idea of being pro-democracy automatically codes as left. So I want to know how you're thinking about this and how her opinion resonated with you.
Yeah, I have to disagree with it. I come from the older part of the right. I come from an era that no longer exists on the right, where I grew up believing that the Constitution and the rule of law and the way that this country was structured, as imperfectly as we started out, fundamentally was about the protection of a democracy inside of this republic, of the ability of Americans to contest their ideas peacefully before Congress or state legislative bodies, to fight things out in the way the founders intended us to fight things out, with strong words and strong ideas and maybe strong language. And occasionally, back in that day, occasionally fist fights on the floor of the Senate and the House. But that has disappeared over time. And I think it's a regrettable thing that democracy codes as left. I think democracy should code as American. And I think that a lot of folks in the progressive movement and the Democratic Party for a long time ceded that ground to the Republicans. They just said, yeah, you guys take all the patriotic symbols. You guys take the flag. You guys take the Constitution. We'll do something new. And that something new is often a good thing to do, but it needlessly gives away this tremendous heritage that this country, through great pain and suffering, has achieved over 250 years. And again, our imperfect founding ended up leading to a system where 600,000 Americans died to change a big element of that imperfect founding. And millions of Americans suffered in the continuation of trying to change that initial flaw in the code of slavery. But that should make everyone proud. People should be proud of that inheritance. They should know that they're the inheritors of bending that arc the right direction, and that the things in our Constitution that are good and worthy and meritorious should be protected and praised. And giving that to the Republican Party of today, which is not a political party, it's a cult, and a power cult at that, is a mistake.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because one of the things that we are thinking about here on Future Hindsight, of course, is that being pro-democracy is a big tent. And yes, lately, in the last 10 years, let's say, people keep talking about, let's find common ground and build from there and form coalitions, et cetera, et cetera. But what you just said, and this is also what we agree with, is that the common ground is that the United States is the beacon of democracy around the world. Like, this is our national identity. This is who we are. So if we accept that idea as our common ground, how do you think about building that pro-democracy coalition across the entire political spectrum, especially now that so much has changed?
Yeah, I think we have to really be realistic about what America is now. We have one party that is extraordinarily good at getting elected, and that's the Republicans.
Yes.
They have built a magnificently tuned machine to exploit human fear, jealousy, racial anxieties, ethnic anxieties, cultural anxieties, and it is powerful. It is powerful. We have another party with really good hearts who often confuse a great-looking PowerPoint deck with persuading people to let you govern. And I think that if we look at the risks we face, even though Trump is in a state of decline physically and mentally and politically, the dangers to that magnificent machine of electoral politics, and you mentioned in the beginning gerrymandering and voter suppression, those things, those are tools that they have refined and developed. Even since I left the party 10 years ago, those things have become much more sophisticated. But I think if we leave the battlefield to them in any area, if we leave the definition of being an American to them, we're in for a very bad outcome. And so what I love about, being the sort of weird guy in the room sometimes among liberals and progressives is we do end up with a lot more in common about this desire and this love of this country than the caricature of the right would make out. I love seeing Democratic elected officials now taking what I call the strong side of patriotism. Like, no, we believe in the Constitution. You guys don't. We believe in the rule of law. You guys don't. We believe that we follow the laws of the country and the Geneva Convention, those things. You guys are shooting people out of the water for fun. So I think Democrats are learning how to do this. They're learning how to engage people where they are, not where they'd like them to be. Engaging people where they are is really important, Mila, because a lot of the time we see, and I go back to this, there are a lot of Democratic political professionals who want to focus group things until they don't offend anybody. They want to write a policy paper that's 700 pages long with 14 appendixes, rather than saying to people, hey, what's wrong in your community? How can we help? So right. I think that this is a path where in saving the country, the Democratic Party will change in some fundamental ways, and that's okay.
It's interesting you talk about messaging. There's so many messages that I think that are out there that people are testing in real time, not just in PowerPoint presentations, but talking to each other. I mean, thinking about the off-cycle races, whether that's in Tennessee or in New York City. And I saw your interview on the Midweek Burn Live this week, last week, rather. And you said that there was a message that the center needs to hear. What is that message? What would you say to everyday people who are, not the people who are like you and me, we're paying a lot of attention, but people who are, walking about their lives?
I say this to people a lot, and I said this to a U.S. Senator the other day who we were talking about messaging, and it comes down to this. All this stuff is crazy, and it's hurting you. We're going to help you. It's going to be new. We're going to listen. We're going to meet you where you are. We're going to talk about the things that are hurting you. And in America right now, what is hurting people at scale, the thing that will be the decisive electoral change at scale, is to link the economic distress that they're having with the cult and its leadership. That economic distress is happening because those local Republican members of Congress didn't say no to the trade war. It's because they didn't say no to the craziness. They didn't say no to things that have hurt farmers and small businesses across this country, and that have hurt a lot of people in red states who voted for Donald Trump. And Democrats coming to them and saying, what's wrong? Let me help you. Let us fix this. It's not the way Democrats have come in the past. But that message of telling people, we're listening. We're here. We're not those people. We're going to fix this. It's going to be work. And not promising miracles. That's one of the things I think that people, even among the MAGA voters now, are saying very clearly. There's some polling out last week that said even MAGA voters now are saying they think Donald Trump is at fault. The trade stuff, the handing over the economy to Silicon Valley and to venture capital firms and to Wall Street bankers, It's not working for those folks in the middle. And the promises that they were made of a great golden age and all this money and all this prosperity, they're not living it. Democrats can go to them and now say, look, we know you like him. It's okay. We get it. We know you voted Republican for years because that's how you were raised. We get it. But those things are hurting you every day. Those things are causing your family to have a worse quality of life than your parents did and their grandparents did. And we're going to find a way out of this.
Yeah, so the political parties have really disappointed so many people across the spectrum. There's so many independents now. It doesn't matter, whether you were a Republican or whether you were a Democrat before.
Fastest growing group of registered voters in the country are independents or no party affiliation voters by far.
Yeah. So I'm curious about the work of the Lincoln Project, which you co-founded in 2019. I know it's a political action committee, but to me, it actually feels like you're building a political party, a new kind of party. And I mean this in the sense that you're offering a third way of political thinking and being, right? You're not sort of like, we're going to do this thing that everybody does in neither party.
Building a new party is a very hard lift, and we're not a political party. What I think we're trying to be more than a political party is a movement of people that want to put the country first, that want to get back to a moment where it's not about, do you have an R or a D after your name? It's about, are you going to do good work for real people? We think back, and I think about this moment a lot. Back in 2008, and I worked hard to elect John McCain. Okay, I worked hard. I got in trouble with the right-wingers because I said the birth certificate thing was a lie, but okay. But when John McCain was asked in that town hall if Barack Obama was a Kenyan Muslim spy or whatever, he said no. He's a good man. He's an American. He loves his family. No. And I remember on election night, and I was upset. I was heartbroken. We had all put everything we had into John. And on election night, Barack Obama in Chicago on that stage said, John's a good man. He served this country. I want to get back to the world where, it's weird to remember this. In the days before 9/11, George W. Bush and Ted Kennedy and Orrin Hatch were doing a bill to improve public education in America. I want to get back to where, like my old boss, George H.W. Bush, would call Democrats and Republicans into a room and go, hey, how do we work this out? My people aren't going to love it. Your people aren't going to love it, but we're going to get something done. I look at those things and I don't think of them as like golden memories in the distant past. I think of them as a path to go forward. So I'm 62 years old. I'm probably too old to build a political party at this point. But the Lincoln Project has tried to be a voice in the pro-democracy space that teaches people how to fight back against bad guys. And one of the things we do is, we have an in-house phrase for it, but I won't use it on the air. We call it narrative engineering, where our ability to go up and mess with Donald Trump's head and mess with these Republicans because we know who they are. We used to be them, and play psychological warfare with them in a way that gets them distracted and off message and off base and has Trump throwing things at the wall. That's a superpower. It's not kind, but it is a superpower in a world where the other side governs by cruelty and fear and terror. Having people like the Lincoln Project out there who are willing to go, no. You're going to enter the finding out phase if you keep doing these bad things. And we try to deliver the finding out phase to a lot of the time.
So what has been your most effective ad or messaging that you got out there in the election cycles? Because, I saw a lot of your ads, but I don't know which ones really speak to the audience that you're really trying to reach.
I'll tell you that the ad I think that was the most effective ad we've ever done in 2020 was an ad called Morning in America. Mourning in America. Every Republican of a certain age remembers the famous ad in 1984 called Morning in America, Ronald Reagan's famous ad. Hal Riney voiced it. It is a beautiful ad. It was incredibly effective. We built its inverse. We built its counter. And that ad tested, and I don't really test my ads up front. We test them on the back end because I'm not here to make the most vanilla pudding ad. I'm here to make an ad that gets to the heart and the gut, because the heart and the gut beat the head all the time in politics. That ad was incredibly powerful for people, and it spoke to a lot of Republicans that we were able to peel off and get them to vote for Joe Biden. And it really came down to an emotional punch because it had historical resonance with people. We do ads that are emotional. We do ads that are funny. We do ads that are unusual. We did our first big AI ad this year during the Epstein stuff, and it was called Trump Not Like Us. And it was basically taking the Drake video and inverting it on Trump. And so, we do things that are weird and unusual. And sometimes we take a break. We watch the game play out for a while. Right now, Trump has been doing so much damage to himself. He doesn't need us to step on his throat. But we've got a program we're running called 26 and 26 for next year. And that's going to target these Republicans who have been sticking with Trump and hurting their own people. These people vote 100% of the time with the guy, or 99.8% of the time. And we believe that kind of advertising is going to be really important in the coming year. And we don't do it really on TV anymore. It's all digitally targeted. It's all modern. When I started in this business, it used to be, we're going to buy an ad on the Super Bowl for 3,000 points and a cloud of dust. And now I target various people at a very granular level. So
Right.
But
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the culture wars because,
Sure.
you really have your finger on the pulse and you've been doing ads for a long time. And I love that you really are going for, the gut reaction and winning hearts and minds. And of course, the culture wars have evolved significantly over the last 40 years.
Sure.
And in that time frame, billionaire spending on right-wing media has really played a key role, in changing the way people think and mainstreaming people like Tucker Carlson and the late Charlie Kirk, right? Nick Fuentes, all of these people. And a part of me feels like they achieved their goals, right? Winning hearts and minds to go further and further to the right. But another part of me feels like they opened Pandora's box. So I'm wondering, how do you think this ends? Or that's the wrong question. Where do you think this is going?
Well, one of the things about the culture war is it's where Democrats go to die. And I mean that from the national electoral map. And I wrote about this in my second book, where the purpose of the culture war is not to convince anybody on the East Coast or the West Coast that the Republicans are right. It's to scare the crap out of middle America, 65-year-old white voters in Iowa and Missouri and Kansas. It's to activate this sort of vestigial response of these people are coming to take our job, kill us, make our children atheists, all these things that scare people that live in a much more traditional, less mediated world than we understand. They are not watching MSNBC or CNN or even any other local news anymore. It's all Sinclair or Nexstar controlling their local news. If they're watching cable news, it's Fox, or in many cases now it's worse. It's OAN or it's Newsmax. And that investment those billionaires made, they screamed for years, the liberal media. And they could never quite make that argument stick. So they just bought their own media. They just built their own and bought their own. And as much as Roger Ailes was kind of an evil genius, people forget about the genius part of that. And when he built Fox, he built it because he had a political plan in mind for the future, for the long run. And that plan was to give the populist right-wing conservative movement that he was very keen on an infrastructure that nobody else could rival. And nobody else can. Fox is larger in an audience every night than MSN and CNN combined. Their idea about the liberal media and media projection is just that, it's projection. They have all the tools. They built them. They bought them. And on the left, people do not do that. They just don't. They invest in one election or one idea, and then they move on. And it is something that I think they never understood. They thought, okay, well, ABC, NBC, CNN, MSNBC will always be with us. They will always have a big voice in the news. People will always go to the Washington Post, the New York Times, and they will find the truth. Well, you go to the Washington Post now, and I won't say it's gone full MAGA, but it's certainly like MAGA adjacent.
Okay. Yes.
So that is a big factor in all of this, is that there is a big infrastructure on the media side from the Republicans that has been built up for them. And that culture war is its jet fuel. I will tell you this, I've seen a large number of Democrats starting to do this now. We saw it in New Jersey. We saw it in Virginia. We're seeing it in Florida with David Jolly. We're seeing it in a bunch of different races now. We're seeing it in Texas with Tallarico. When they bring up the culture war stuff, when they say, well, you want trans men in bathrooms, they don't say, no, I don't. My policy is X. They say, if you're obsessed with that, that's on you. But I'm going to talk about the economy today. I'm going to talk about the fact that people don't have jobs in our community. I'm going to talk about the fact that everything that's happening in Washington that you're wasting time on, you're talking about bathrooms, and I'm talking about 150,000 people who are unemployed in Northern Virginia. And moving on to the economic terrain, getting back to that message of this is crazy, it's hurting you, we hear you, we'll fix it, is helping Democrats get past the culture war era. And they should. The culture war era is something that Republicans have baited them into a dozen times. And when you say to them, no, talking about something else, and when you put that obsession back in their faces, they shut down. If Kamala Harris had gone out and said, Donald Trump seems to think a lot about trans people, a lot. He seems obsessed about it. He can't stop talking about them. It's weird how much he thinks about them. If she had done that and gotten in the psychological brain loop in Trump, they would have stopped. But they didn't stop because the Democratic Party could not build the correct response to that. And Republicans don't spend money on anything that doesn't work. And they spent $360 million on those ads.
Oh, my God. So many thoughts I have here.
I know. And by the way, the other impulse here that Republicans exploit with Democrats is there's a reason Republicans were going after Black Lives Matter first, because they knew Democrats would reflexively get into the wrong discussion. They got baited into it. The trans issue, they got baited into the wrong discussion. And Republicans do that so that Democrats will say, we need to have compassion for people, which we do. It's real. That's a legitimate, real, moral, and ethically correct response. But politically, it's a trick that Republicans use to fool Democrats.
But for so long.
we should be worried about a brutal asshole cop putting his knee on George Floyd's throat until he murdered him. We should hate that and be worried about that. But then Republicans play that out and say, well, you must be in favor of criminals. You must want people to... And Democrats fall into that trap of wanting to say the right, compassionate thing instead of turning this back on the Republicans for the absurdity that it is.
Yeah, this is really good advice. We'll be back with Rick in just a moment, so stay with us. You'll definitely want to hear this episode's Civic Spark. One small step we can all take to be more empowered and ignite collective change. But first, starting something new is hard. When Future Hindsight first came to your headphones almost 8 years ago, I had to figure out all the facets of podcasting on my own, which meant that every single day introduced a new question that needed a new answer, and fast. It can feel overwhelming when your to-do list just grows and grows with new tasks every day. Honestly, that list can pretty easily take over your life if you're not careful. But maybe you can find the right tool that not only helps you out, but simplifies everything. Wouldn't that be such a game changer? For millions of businesses out there, that tool is Shopify. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the U.S. From household names like Mattel and Drew House to fresh brands that are just getting started. So if you want to get started, take the first step with your own design studio. With hundreds of ready-to-use templates, Shopify helps you build a beautiful online store to match your brand's style. Accelerate your content creation with helpful AI tools that write product descriptions, page headlines, and even enhance your product photography. Shopify is packed with so many great tools that you can get the word out as if you have an entire marketing team behind you. In the blink of an eye, you can easily create email and social media campaigns wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling. Shopify is your commerce expert with world-class expertise in everything from managing inventory to international shipping to processing returns and beyond. So if you're ready to sell, you're ready for Shopify. What I love about Shopify is that no matter how big you want to grow, Shopify gives you everything you need to take control and take your business to the next level. Turn your big business idea into cha-ching with Shopify on your side. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period and start selling today at shopify.com/hopeful. Go to shopify.com/hopeful. Shopify.com/hopeful. And now let's return to my conversation with Rick Wilson. So I read your Substack on a regular basis, which I really enjoy.
Thank you.
And I read the one about what happens when Trump dies.
Yeah.
And everybody knows he's frail. Everybody knows that his health is failing. It's happening before our eyes. And just like the culture wars have evolved, so has the MAGA movement, right? In part because he's becoming weaker as a human, but also politically he has hurt himself with the grift, with the lawlessness, the corruption, all of these things, the weakening economy, the tariffs, et cetera, et cetera. And all of these things are obviously not without consequence, even among the most diehard Trump supporters. So what's your take on the latest in MAGA land? There's so much happening right now with Pete Hegseth, et cetera, and his mortality all tied together. How does it all end? Because eventually Trump will not be on this planet anymore.
That is the eventual case. Look, it is, and the image I used for the article about him dying was a clip from The Death of Stalin.
Yes,
you
great.
are
I
going
love
to
that movie.
see. Oh, it's so good.
So good.
Folks, if you haven't watched it, go watch it. It'll cheer you up.
Yes.
What you're going to see in the next weeks, months, years is factions have emerged already. They're just not out in the daylight. There is the Silicon Valley J.D. Vance faction, which believes in all this weird Curtis Yarvin, post-America, post-democracy stuff. They have tremendous amounts of money. They have tremendous amounts of data and intent. They have J.D. Vance, who is not a great candidate. Now, he's positionally great, and he's playing the MAGA game. He is already picking out curtains in the Oval Office. You got the Marco Rubio faction, which is funded by a lot of private equity people, BlackRock, Blackstone folks. You've got the Trump family dynasty faction, where Don Jr. and Eric are not going to give this thing up. They've never made more money. So they believe that the Trump name will ensure that one of them can run for president. One of them will run for governor of either New York or Florida. One will run for president. They want to keep this thing going. You have other people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Ted Cruz who are breaking from MAGA earlier than a lot of people because they are more, let me say this. Ted Cruz is not a stupid person. He's klutzy. He's bad with humans, but he's not stupid. And he sees that there's going to be a transition, a phase change in the MAGA movement. Marjorie Taylor Greene is not a smart person, but she's very crafty and feral. And so she sees there's going to be a phase change. They're going to try to set up new lanes into this party. Josh Hawley is right now doing things like coming out for ACA subsidies and food stamps from this weird populist nationalist position that he sees the ability to try to build a working class coalition from the ruins of MAGA. All of it is going to be like rats in a bucket. They're going to fight each other to the death. This is going to be a battle royal. It is going to end ugly. The party will divide itself up into a bunch of factions. They will all play these purity check games with one another. It will get loud and messy and nasty. You're not loyal. You were never real. They'll bring out all of Marco's old statements and Ted Cruz's old statements, and J.D. Vance's old statements to try to prove that person is an imposter, an apostate, all those things. Nothing about it will go easy. All of them are trying to like kiss Lachlan Murdoch's ass right now to become the one. All of them are trying to play to these MAGA influencers to be the one. And I don't see how any of it is glued together without Donald Trump himself. Trump is sui generis. Trump is a unique and uniquely terrible figure in our politics, but not one of these people had a 14-year reality TV show that convinced millions of Americans they were a good negotiator.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Not one of them had that celebrity. Even if it's D-list celebrity still matters a lot in politics. And not one of them will have the same level of power and connection with the base. And even if it's a Trump family member, they are so ugly about who they are, and they're so corrupt about who they are, that the other guys are going to go, I love Donald Trump, but Eric and John Jr., they stole so much money from people. They're scammy crypto. I can see the thing opening up. There's just not going to be a single kumbaya. And I'll tell you, Mila, one more reason for that. Donald Trump will cling to power until the last possible second. Until that EKG flatlines, he will cling to power. Anybody who starts running for president early is going to get their throat cut politically by Donald Trump. And he's going to try. He's a gambler too. Even if he's on life support, he's going to say, "I want to be president again." And there will be a number of people in the Republican Party who will go, "Okay."
Yeah, that makes me wonder. So from my perspective, I'm originally from Indonesia, which is a deeply corrupt country. I think that's fair to say. So I'm pretty, I want to say, sober about everything that's happening. And I'm also pretty cynical, but I'm at the same time really hopeful because, I am American now, and I do believe in the project of democracy. So one thing that we hear a lot is that executive aggrandizement from the White House is a huge threat to American democracy, embodied by Donald Trump. And I wonder if you think that's the most dangerous thing for us right now. And if not, what do you think is the most dangerous thing? What keeps you up at night?
I actually think there's something more dangerous than Trump.
Okay.
And what's more dangerous than Trump is what I euphemistically call the hate machine. This is a set of incentives and systems that have divided America very effectively for political outcomes. And it is everything from this billionaire-funded MAGA media machine to increasing use of AI and online communications to influence people. It is the culture war implementation that has caused enormous damage and harm in our country and divided America in profound ways. It is the Wall Street money cluster using government power and regulatory capture to enrich themselves in ways that are unsustainable and unimaginable. And it is a large far-right coalition of groups ranging from Christian nationalists to the Project 2025 goons to Leonard Leo to the Seven Mountains folks, all of which have a set of political outcomes they want for themselves. And they're in an alliance, and it's not run by any one person. And this is why it's dangerous. There's no secret volcano layer with the supervillain. This is a set of tools and strategies and personnel that are very good at winning those elections, and they want to win them for very bad reasons.
Yeah. Well, given everything you said just now about what's most dangerous, and also the opportunity with the upcoming fight when Trump's power wanes, I'm curious about what you think is an opportunity, for Americans to do collectively. Sure. On the left, we hear all the time that there needs to be more grassroots engagement and orienting activism toward participation in social movements. And you mentioned that the Lincoln Project is a movement. Yeah. So how do you think about solving for democracy and taking advantage of what we can do right now? And basically the volatility, the instability that actually, I think, creates a kind of space for somebody to do something new.
Yeah, I think there is a space for a new form of political engagement in the center. And frankly, I view this as an area for new political engagement on the center right all the way to the far left. Because there are a lot of folks in the center right who have never been comfortable with Trump, but they were behaviorally stuck in the GOP. Those people are increasingly alienated. A lot of them have moved to become independents. It has to be emotionally resonant with people. It cannot be driven by policy papers, and it cannot be driven by what I call luxury issues. And there are a lot of issues that are important and salient and relevant, but they're not electoral winners. They do not work to move people's hearts and minds. They don't work in the gut and the heart. My progressive friends get mad at this. But when I look at the panel of most important of issues for 2026, our polling just looked at a couple weeks ago, climate change is at 4%.
4%.
Gun control is at 1%. These things don't matter to what voters say they want to hear about in 2026. That's not that they're not important issues. It's not that we shouldn't address these issues. It's that those issues are not what you run on. 62% are telling us inflation, prices, and the economy and jobs.
Yes.
It's a no-brainer.
Yeah, that's why Mamdani won. That's what he talked about.
Of course. And that was the magic of the affordability message, why it's so important. In Virginia, you have Abigail Spanberger, a center-left candidate. And Virginia is a purple, very centrist state. And even in Northern Virginia, where people think it's more progressive, it's still pretty center-left. Affordability wiped the board with the Republicans in Virginia. In New Jersey, you have a left candidate in Mickey Sherrill in a state that's more left, And affordability, especially in her case on electricity pricing of all things, we saw it in the polling. It just blew the doors off. And so she was making the case on affordability. Mamdani in New York. Yes, as much as Donald Trump and everybody else wants to describe him as a Marxist in waiting or whatever fantasy they have about communism, he's talking about the rent. He's talking about transit prices. He's talking about making life affordable in New York. Because you know what? If you're a family of four in Manhattan and you make $350,000 a year, you can't live in Manhattan. You're in poverty at that economic level. He was talking about making New York affordable for everybody. And those three races joined up with two Democratic statewide wins in Georgia for the Public Service Commission, which is weirdly powerful in Georgia. They were talking about affordability. In Florida, in some red cities in Florida, Democrats picked up city council and county commission seats talking about affordability. They didn't get in the culture war. They didn't get in the ditch on whatever crazy thing, Fox was saying that week. They talked about affordability. They talked about the economy, jobs, giving people the ability to raise a family again. And that's something that we're seeing a hopeful set of numbers emerging. That coalition Donald Trump sort of picked up in 2024 that we were all scared about, young African-American men, young Hispanic men, white men 18 to 40 with those giant increases in those numbers, those are all disappearing. They're disappearing because those people voted because they thought, he's going to kick ass on the economy. He's going to help me. I'm going to get a job. No. So I think a recentering on economics and a recentering on not just the threat to democracy that the Republican Party and MAGA poses, but a recentering on how capricious and corrupt and stupid and ineffective that movement has been for people. Because it hasn't delivered for anybody. If you're Steven Schwartzman or Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, you're doing great. You're killing it.
Yes.
But there are only about 50,000 families in the country that make over $10 million a year. It's only about 150,000 families that make over $1 million a year. If you're not in that box, you are struggling in this country. You are sweating it. And the idea Democrats can say, we're going to help build an economy that works. We're going to listen to you, what you're saying. We're not going to try to say the most important issue is climate change when it's not what voters want to talk about. If you're wasting a single day, because there's one thing you can't get back in a campaign, and that's time. If you're running for office right now, you have 340 days left before the election, approximately. You don't get to reset the day. You don't get a time machine. You could try to raise more money. You could try to run more ads. You could try to do more town hall meetings. You try to do more rallies, but you don't get a single day back. You don't get a message cycle back. So if you're going to try to beat a message into people, they have to hear it in America right now about 30 times before they believe it. If I say to you, my policy is to return to the gold standard, they're not going to believe it until they hear you say it about 30 times. You've got to jam that in over and over. And your message for Democrats this year should be, I'm going to make the economy better and help you. I'm going to help your family. I'm not going to produce miracles. I'm not going to promise you pie in the sky. I'm going to help your family. We're going to undo the things that are hurting you. Say it again and say it again and say it again and say it again. I learned this lesson. It's a Republican lesson. When I first started in 88, I initially worked for a guy named Connie Mack, who's running for U.S. Senate. You could wake Connie up out of a sound sleep and say, what's your policy, Connie? He would say, less taxes, less government, less spending, and more freedom. Now, whether you agree with that statement or not, he said it thousands of times. 40 years later, guys on the campaign, we still joke about it. How you doing? Less taxes, less spending, less government, more freedom. Being on message is a Republican superpower, and they know it. And so, look, they're going to try to change the subject 100 times. Democrats need to stay on the subject that moves the voters.
Mm-hmm. So we are a show that aims to inspire civic action in everybody. Sure. So every week on Future Hindsight, I ask my guests to share a civic spark, one small step we can all take to be more empowered and ignite collective change. What's a good way to turn the insights that you've just shared with us into action?
Neighbors, friends, and family. We, as a country, have a lot of parasocial relationships that are mediated online. The most persuasive voices in your life are still your neighbors, your friends, and your family. And you can be a persuasive voice with your neighbors, your friends, and your family. It requires going to meet people in person, breaking bread with them, having a beer with them, going to a sporting event with them, doing something with them, saying, hey, you want to go to the No Kings thing with me today? You start to build that network because, no one can build a network big enough on their own, but they can build a network of networks. They can build circles of people wider than their own. And it's sharing with people what you believe. It is getting with people and saying, you know what? You live next door to me. We may disagree on something, but let's talk it through. Or saying to a friend you haven't talked to because you see him on Facebook or you see him on Twitter with the red hat stuff. You say, you know what? Let's go have a beer. And it's hard to become a demon in the head of those people when you're socializing with them. It's hard to be the bad guy in their mind, the caricature in their mind when, hey, we're having a barbecue. Come on over. Hey, let's go get breakfast. Let's go to Waffle House. It is a way for people to build those connections. And you're not doing a political ask. You're modeling behavior of civility and courtesy and friendship and community. And it is a powerful force. And look, I try to do it a lot. It's hard sometimes. I live in a red part of the country. I live in Tallahassee, Florida, folks. My area is a little tiny blue dot, but I am surrounded by an ocean of MAGA. And I have a lot of Republican friends who stayed in the party for whatever reason, whether they were afraid or whether they had commercial interests from whatever. But, if you don't have conversations, if you don't communicate with people, if you don't get out of the hole, if you don't get offline sometimes, you will end up feeling that frustration, that poison that is pumped at us every day on social media more bitterly, and you'll be less effective as a communicator.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is all really good advice. So, Rick, I have just one more question.
Okay.
Looking into the future, what makes you hopeful?
What makes me hopeful? I truly believe we live in a country that has had such terrible, terrible problems in our past. I look at how bad it is right now, and I realize in the Civil War, 600,000 people laid down their lives for an idea. I look back and I realize in the Revolutionary War, when we were a much smaller country, 60,000 people were either killed or wounded. And that would be the equivalent today of like 30 million people. I look at this country and the providence that we have saved ourselves from the darkness over and over. And we still have this unique inheritance, this unique system that has been passed down to us that deserves saving. The country deserves saving. That's what keeps me going. Believe me, I would love to retire and go write books and raise my grandchildren. I would love to be off the battlefield. But every day I know that if you don't keep the fight going, if you don't keep the fight front and center, if you don't link arms with other people and fight the evil wins. I'm hopeful because I know this country has emerged from tougher times and worse things. But I also know that you've got to be strong about it every day. You can't take your foot off the pedal.
Indeed. Thank you very much. That is very hopeful. Rick, it was really a pleasure, really a treat to have you on the show. Thank you.
Thank you, Mila. Appreciate that. Delighted to be with you. Thanks so much.
Rick Wilson is a renowned political strategist, infamous ad maker, writer, speaker, and political commentator. He's also the host of the Lincoln Project podcast and the Enemies List podcast. Remember, civic action doesn't have to be complicated. It's about small steps that spark progress, like sharing this episode with a friend. Let's recap this week's Civic Spark and fire up our collective power. It's a little cliche, I know, but in a world where we spend so much time online, we must remember that in-person conversations still reign supreme. So make sure you're building on your network of neighbors, friends, and family, because that's how coalition building works. Next week on Future Hindsight, we're joined by Michael Brownstein. He's professor and chair of philosophy at John Jay College and professor of philosophy at the Graduate Center CUNY. He's also co-author of Somebody Should Do Something, How Anyone Can Help Create Social Change. That's next time on Future Hindsight. Now, be sure to follow us on your podcast app so you'll never miss an episode. And if you're listening on your browser, you can find Future Hindsight on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any other podcast app. We're here to build your civic action toolkit every week, so follow Future Hindsight now and we'll come right to you. And if you want to support Future Hindsight and all the work we do as an independent pro-democracy podcast, please subscribe to the Civics Club on Patreon. head to patreon.com/futurehindsight now to join. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time, see clearly, act boldly, and spark the change you want to see. This episode was produced by Zach Travis and me.
This podcast is part of the Democracy Group,